Well, okay then. So we're back, and I think it's a moment that a lot of you have been waiting for. And by a lot, I mean the 90 of you that are subscribed. I really do appreciate that. We're going to build the community one person at a time. I'm going to tell you a story, and it's the story of this airplane. This is a 1963 Beechcraft Bonanza model P35. It's one of those V-tail, fork-tail Dr. killers that you hear about. We're rescuing this one after it sat in Savannah for a few years, maybe 3 years. But the airplane was actually really well cared for before that and didn't go through too much of the Savannah wild weather because it was in a community hangar for quite some time. The previous owner loved this airplane, loved flying, but life just kind of got in the way, as it does for a lot of different people. After a bit of back and forth and with the information on what it would take to get the airplane back up and flying, I made an offer and the owner accepted. So now this airplane's completely mine. Let's talk about risk management when it comes to buying unloved airplanes or airplanes that need a little attention. I think of an airplane as built up of 3 basic components, and this is really high level, so stick with me and you'll see where I'm going with this. We've got flight controls, we've got an engine up front, and then we've got structure. We've got everything else that's connected to the airplane. You don't hear me talking about avionics or electronics because at the end of the day, you can shut that master switch off in the airplane and the airplane will keep flying. Okay, here's the money shot. The V-tail. These control surfaces are in fantastic shape. If you know anything about Bonanzas, you'd know that the Ruddervators are gold. They're made out of gold essentially, because I've even seen a set online being sold for $30,000 for the pair. These airplanes are seeing the junkyard a lot faster because we can't keep up with parts, and on these V-tail Bonanzas, the Ruddervators are one of those parts. Let's talk a little bit about the engine. Does it run? Does it have compression on all cylinders? What do those cylinders look like? Could you pull a spark plug out and see if there's a little bit of corrosion? Actually, let's go and take a look at this particular engine because it's a fairly decent example of a well-kept engine. This is a Continental IO 470N model, November. And this engine has less than 1,000 hours on it, so it had recently been overhauled. And it's actually got a new cylinder on here too. And the numbers that I'm seeing from the previous annual on this airplane seem to indicate that this engine was very healthy and was running really well. When we got to the airplane, you do all of the things that we did on the Arrow to get it back up and flying. And one of those things was to pull all the spark plugs and get lubrication down into the cylinders before you try to start the airplane. We did all of those things. And I'm happy to say that on the first try, the airplane started up with absolutely no problem. The airplane ran like it hadn't been parked for 3 years. I'm a Piper guy, so I think and talk about structures a whole bunch, especially now in the light of new ADs that are coming out about spars and spar corrosion and spar failure. But we're talking structure. Is the wing attached? Is the airplane going to fly in one piece? That's the other piece of the risk matrix that I'm looking at whenever I'm looking at making an offer on a potential rescue, which this very much is. Although this is a lot less work than we found on the Arrow, all of those pieces of the puzzle still apply. It's a thorough annual. It is understanding the history of the airplane, getting all of the logs, which were in fantastic shape. So I've got to thank the previous owner and the folks that were doing work on this airplane before for doing a great job of keeping great records. But those are the things that I'm looking at. I'm looking at flight controls, engine, and generally the structure. And everything was in check. Everything was fine. When I got the logbooks, I realized really quickly that this airplane had only flown about 7 hours after the last annual. Just like the Arrow, it made perfect sense why everything that we've checked has been right in the middle of the tolerance band, right in spec. Right, so we talked about the engine, it being a 260 horsepower Continental 6-cylinder engine. It's got a massive, and I mean massive, prop hanging off the front. That was recently overhauled. We will eventually put gammy injectors on this engine to make the best of the performance of this particular engine. And then we will eventually go with an electronic magneto, or two, if we could get that set up. But an EMAG, gammy injectors, it already has an engine monitor. I'd be really happy with that particular setup. The spark plugs have been cleaned and gapped. The cylinders have been bore scoped. Everything under the engine has been checked. We've got some things to tie up, like zip ties where we want to move certain cables off of certain things. I think I've mentioned somewhere south of 1,000 hours. I think that engine, since the last overhaul, is probably at about 700 or 800 hours. So it's got a lot of life left in it. I don't think I'm going to hit anywhere near its natural TBO anytime soon. So that's something to think about for that particular engine. All right, let's keep looking. One of the projects I'm actually doing while the airplane is down for its annual is making my own carpets. These carpets actually have a burn cert associated with them already. What I won't be able to do is a nice surged edge. That's just outside my budget for now. So we have gone ahead and just melted the edges with a little bit of heat to make sure that they don't come unraveled. That's something you can do to save yourself a ton of money, but also give yourself a fantastic product in the end. One thing that surprises me a lot about this airplane is just how far the back seats move. You're talking a ton of space, but this airplane actually has, and most of these later model V-tails have an aft CG problem, so I'll probably never have a passenger sitting that far back, but tons of leg room. And there's a sample of what's going on with the carpets, stuff that I've cut out myself, using the old carpets that came out as a template. Let's go take a look at the panel. I think I'm happy with where it's at. I don't have any plans to change anything. What do you think? You're gonna see a Garmin 340, a GMA 340 for the audio panel. You're gonna see a Garmin GNS 530 for the navigator. Now it's non-WAS, and if I could find a WAS navigator, I'd put it in, but I'm not gonna spend any money on that because it's still a very capable unit, and there's still tons of support out there. It's got a Narco 12D as COM2. The buttons are getting a little bit sticky trying to tune a frequency, so we're going to have to take a look at that. And then it's got a GTX 327 transponder. So that's non-ADS-B, but out on the wing it actually has a sky beacon that makes us ADS-B compliant. S-Tech Autopilot, I've only checked it on the ground at this point. It's got a fantastic HSI, really cool looking attitude indicator, and then all of your other standard bells and whistles for a panel. Plenty of room back here. The door is just really small. The later model Bonanzas had a gigantic door. I wish this model had it. We will not be spending money to put a door into this airplane. We're just going to make the best with what we have. The seats are the worst part of this airplane. We've got some work to do on these seats. Another option is really to go and just find a set of seats on eBay and just use those if they're in better condition. I also need shoulder harnesses. I always want any of my general aviation airplane to have shoulder harnesses, and this one does not have them. Shoulder harnesses for this particular airplane are incredibly expensive. Now, what's your life worth? What is safety worth to you or to me? I may have to find a way to afford the install on the shoulder harnesses, but it'd be well worth it. Now, later model airplanes and Barons have an integrated shoulder harness in the front seats. If I can find a way to legally put those seats into this airplane with the harnesses involved, the expense of a used set of seats might actually become worth it at that point. I'm comfortable flying it as it is, but it's not the way to go. A lot of accidents have happened where the impact was perfectly survivable, but the pilot or passenger passed away from head trauma just by smacking their head on the panel. These things happen, and I don't want to be a statistic in that way. I want to stay off Dan Greider's list. So shoulder harnesses, that's going to be one of the big things for this airplane. The rear bulkhead cover is missing, so you can see down the tunnel of the airplane. It does have an S-Tech autopilot, so you'll see some servos for the autopilot back there. The ELT is over on the wall. We currently have this and this is very flimsy. It's starting to come apart. So I ordered some wood, some aircraft grade wood, whatever that means. It's plywood, but it's many, many, many plies. It's not the thin stuff from Home Depot. And I used the CNC router to make exactly this shape. And now I just need help transferring the hardware that's in this panel over to this panel. And we'll be ready to put this back into the airplane. This is the co-pilot side. The pilot side looks even worse. I think we've done all that we could do. I've checked that all my tools are back in my Harbor Freight special box. Any of the special tools that I need to use are actually available right back there, but they're just typical sockets and screwdrivers that you use for a lot of things on these airplanes, and they're not all specialty items, let's just put it that way. I think we'll just lock up now and go home, edit this video. I forgot to say what the plan is. I'm gonna hop in the Arrow, take off from here, Eagle Neck, and head directly to Hinesville, or Wright Army Airfield. You've seen a video of me flying the Arrow in there already, but this will be a really short flight from Eagle Neck to Hinesville because gas is $4.75 at Midcoast Regional, or Hinesville. It's the cheapest in the area. And I'm gonna gas up there before heading back to the Shadeport in Savannah. All that's left now is to get the compressions, get everything covered back up, get the interior back in there, and there's a ton of grease points on this airplane, like 50 something places that you've got to put varying greases into and lubricants, and we've got to do that. They say the last 10% of a job is like 90% of the time, and it's just me dragging my feet and not wanting to get down on my hands and knees to go do the job that my AMPs refuse to do. But I'm perfectly capable of doing something like that, so I'll get to it in the coming days. If it's your passion, if you're passionate about something, you find time. I think people are curious about how I'm making all of this stuff possible. And really the answer is I've got really amazing friends who allow me to do stuff like this inside of their hangars and allow me access to their homes. And most importantly, give me access to their knowledge. And I'm taking advantage of all of that. So I'm really thankful for you all who are watching who happen to offer stuff up like that to me. But then after that, it's loans like everybody else. And I know what I'm comfortable with, and I know what financial risks I'm comfortable taking. And there's a little bit of borrowing from myself as well. I consider myself a young, healthy man in my 30s, and that 401k has been tapped a few times, but the outcome is definitely better than the value that I'm taking out of something like a 401k. Not everyone has access to that, but companies like Lightstream will allow you to take out loans responsibly to do the things that you really want to do. But again, it's about being responsible. So maybe speak to a financial advisor before you start playing with old, slightly broken airplanes. I really hope you enjoyed that look at the Bonanza project. I'll be back again in a little while to show you what else is going on in the crazy world of Juwanza's airplanes. The Arrow is coming up for its annual, the Diamond gets new avionics, and the Bonanza needs to get flown for the first time. We'll see you here again soon.